Hello everyone and welcome back to the AI Academy, and thank you again for joining us on this exciting journey into the world of ethical hacking. So, this video is part of our Ethical Hacking Complete course, where we will learn the complex cybersecurity topics into easy-to-understand and practical lessons. If you're passionate about ethical hacking or just getting started, you're in the right place. In our last video, we explored setting up a virtual lab for ethical hacking. We covered choosing a hypervisor, tools like VMware and VirtualBox to create virtual machines, installing Kali Linux, the go-to operating system for penetration testing, setting up victim machines, configuring intentionally vulnerable systems like Metasploitable, network configuration, ensuring proper connectivity and isolation to create a safe hacking environment. If you missed it, we highly recommend checking out the previous video to ensure your lab is ready for hands-on practice. In today's session, we're diving into information gathering, the first step in the ethical hacking process. This phase, often called reconnaissance, involves collecting as much information as possible about the target machine or network quietly and effectively. We'll discuss techniques, tools, and methods to gather insights without direct interaction with the target. By the end of this lecture, you'll have a clear understanding of how to lay the groundwork for your ethical hacking efforts. When it comes to ethical hacking, the first step is all about gathering information. Imagine you're preparing for a battle. No skilled general would charge into enemy territory blindly. Instead, they'd first gather intelligence about the enemy, understanding their strengths, weaknesses, defenses, and key vulnerabilities. This reconnaissance allows the general to devise a strategic plan, choosing the best approach to win with minimal risk. Similarly, in ethical hacking, reconnaissance is about gathering critical information about the target system before taking any action. It helps you map the battlefield, identifying weak points and key areas to focus on. With this information in hand, you can craft an efficient and effective plan for further ethical hacking activities. Ethical hacking is about finding and fixing vulnerabilities in systems. Before you can fix anything, you need to know what you're dealing with. Think of it as playing detective, gathering clues, understanding the environment, and pinpointing weak spots. This phase ensures you don't waste time or effort later and helps you focus on what really matters. What are we trying to achieve here? Identify target weaknesses and vulnerabilities. Think of the system as a fortress. Your goal is to find cracks in the walls or any other weaknesses that could allow an attacker to slip through. Is the operating system outdated? Are there ports open that shouldn't be? This information is like finding the soft spots in the fortress's defenses. Plan precise penetration strategies. Once you know where the weaknesses are, you can plan your approach. Instead of charging blindly, you create a strategy tailored to the specific vulnerabilities you've identified. This ensures you achieve your goals without unnecessary risks or wasted effort. In short, this phase is all about preparation. By the time you're done with reconnaissance, you should have a clear idea of the target environment and how to proceed ethically and effectively. Let's start by understanding what information gathering is and why it's crucial. In ethical hacking, this step is often called reconnaissance, a fancy word that simply means scoping out the situation. The goal is to collect as much information as possible about the target before taking any further steps. Think of it like researching a company before going to a job interview. You want to know their strengths, weaknesses, and key details so you can be well prepared. Types of reconnaissance. When it comes to information gathering, there are two main approaches, depending on how directly you interact with the target. The first one is passive reconnaissance. This is like quietly observing from the sidelines. In this you don't directly interact with the target system, which means you're less likely to be detected. For example, checking public records or social media for information. Looking up domain registration details. Using tools to analyze a company's website without making any changes or leaving a trace. Think of it as reading someone's biography to learn about them without meeting them. And the second one is active reconnaissance. This approach involves directly interacting with the target to gather information. It's a bit more hands-on, like asking someone questions to learn more about them. Examples include sending requests to a server to see which ports are open, running network scans to understand system configurations, using tools to check for responses from the target. Since it involves direct contact, active reconnaissance has a higher chance of being noticed, so it requires careful execution. What information are we looking for? The data you gather during reconnaissance can relate to two broad categories. Network systems. This involves understanding how the network is structured and operates. For example, the range of IP addresses being used, details about routers, firewalls, or servers, identifying vulnerabilities in how these systems communicate. Individual computers. Here, the focus narrows down to specific machines. You might want to know the operating system they are running, which software versions are installed, whether they have unpatched vulnerabilities or misconfigured settings. By the end of this phase, you should have a clearer picture of your target setup. It's like preparing a travel guide before visiting a new city. You know where to go, what to avoid, and how to navigate the terrain. The reconnaissance phase is the cornerstone of ethical hacking. Imagine you're building a house. Before laying a single brick, you'd first survey the land, check the soil, and plan the layout. Skipping this step could lead to costly mistakes down the line. Similarly, in ethical hacking, reconnaissance ensures that your actions are deliberate and effective. Why is this phase essential? Jumping into an attack without preparation is like walking into a dark room. You don't know what's in there, and you might stumble or waste time. Reconnaissance lights up the room, showing you where to step and what to avoid. It's all about gathering the knowledge needed to act smartly and effectively. What does reconnaissance help you identify? The target's operating system. Knowing whether the target is running Windows, Linux, or another OS is crucial. It's like knowing the type of lock before picking it. You need the right tools and techniques. Specific OS versions and known vulnerabilities. Once you know the operating system, the next step is figuring out the version. For instance, if a machine is running an older version of Windows, you can look up vulnerabilities specific to that version. This information gives you a clear idea of where weaknesses might lie. Why does this phase matter so much? Improves attack precision. By understanding the target thoroughly, you can focus your efforts on what will work best. Instead of trying random methods, you can go straight to the techniques that are most likely to succeed. Reduces unnecessary risks. Reckless actions during an attack can trip alarms or cause unintended damage, which is especially bad if you're working ethically. Reconnaissance helps you avoid these pitfalls by giving you a clear roadmap. A practical perspective. Think of this phase as drawing up a blueprint. Without it, you're guessing your way through, and that's never a good strategy. With a solid reconnaissance phase, you're not just hacking, you're hacking smart. When you're gathering information about a target, it's not just about collecting random facts, it's about focusing on details that matter. This is the phase where you map out the most important pieces of the target system, like putting together a puzzle. Here's what you're looking for. IP address. The IP address is like the home address of a computer or device on the network. It's your starting point to locate the target in the digital world. Think of it as identifying the right house in a neighborhood before you even knock on the door. With the IP address in hand, you can start understanding the target's position in the network and what's connected to it. Open ports. Ports are like doors or windows on a computer that let it communicate with the outside world. Some doors are open, meaning services are actively running on them, which can make them potential entry points. Why do open ports matter? Each open port is tied to a specific application or service, like a web server or email server. If the application has a known vulnerability, hackers could exploit it. For example, port 80 often runs web servers, and if the server isn't updated, it could be an easy target. Scanning for open ports tells you which doors are open and what might be behind them. Secure ports. Not all ports are equally vulnerable. Some are configured to be more secure, meaning they've been hardened against attacks or are using encryption. These ports are less likely to provide an easy way in, but it's still good to know which ones are secure to avoid wasting time targeting them. Services and configurations. Understanding the software and configurations running on the system is like checking out what's inside the house after finding the open door. Such as operating system versions. Is it an old version of Windows or Linux? Older versions might have unpatched vulnerabilities. Software details. Are they running outdated or misconfigured software that's easy to exploit? Patch levels. If the system hasn't been updated recently, it's more likely to have vulnerabilities you can explore. By gathering this key information, you're laying the groundwork for a focused and efficient approach. Think of it as creating a checklist. Where is the target machine based on IP address? What ports are open and accessible? What services and configurations are running inside? This kind of organized preparation ensures that your ethical hacking efforts are both effective and responsible. In this lecture we will be particularly focusing on the overview of passive reconnaissance techniques, diving deep into the tools, methods, search operators, and practical approaches. The passive reconnaissance is a critical first step in ethical hacking. It involves gathering as much information as possible about a target without directly interacting with their systems. This stealthy approach reduces the risk of detection and lays the foundation for more focused actions in later phases. Think of it as being an invisible investigator, uncovering clues without tipping off the target. Goals of passive reconnaissance. The ultimate goal of passive reconnaissance is to understand the target's digital and organizational landscape by collecting publicly accessible data. Key objectives include identifying domain and network details, discovering system configurations, technologies, and infrastructure, uncovering human vulnerabilities through social engineering, locating potential security gaps or publicly exposed information. Let's explore tools and techniques used in the passive reconnaissance. We will start with the Netcraft. It is a powerful online tool used for passive reconnaissance to gather detailed information about websites, their hosting environments, and associated technologies. Netcraft is a reconnaissance tool that helps identify hosting providers for websites, server technologies, including software versions, SSL certificate details, which provide insights into encryption and security, subdomains that might indicate additional services or staging environments. This information is essential for ethical hackers to map out a target's digital infrastructure. How to use Netcraft. Using Netcraft is straightforward. 1. Visit the Netcraft Site Report tool. 2. Enter a domain name in the search bar, such as example.com. 3. Review the report that gets generated. Here's an example report for the domain example.com. Domain, example.com. Hosting provider, Google Cloud Platform. Server, Nginx/1.21.0. SSL certificate, issued by Let's Encrypt. Creation date, September 12, 2015. Subdomains: blog.example.com, mail.example.com, dev.example.com. The information gathered from Netcraft can be broken down into practical uses such as server configurations and hosting choices. What to look for. Hosting providers such as AWS, Google Cloud, Azure. Server types such as Apache, Nginx, IIS. Version details that may indicate outdated or vulnerable software. Why it's useful. It identifies potential misconfigurations or vulnerabilities specific to hosting providers or server types. Outdated versions can point to known exploits, providing an entry point for testing. SSL certificate details. What to look for. Who issued the SSL certificate, such as Let's Encrypt or DG Cert. Expiry dates or improperly configured certificates. Mismatched domain names in the certificate. Why it's useful. Improperly configured SSL can allow for man-in-the-middle attacks. Expired certificates signal a neglected security maintenance. Subdomains. What to look for. Subdomains associated with the main domain, such as dev.example.com or staging.example.com. Indications of test environments or internal services exposed to the Internet. Why it's useful. Subdomains might host additional services with weaker security measures, such as beta versions or APIs. Could provide alternative access points into the target system. Let's say you're analyzing the domain examplecompany.com using Netcraft. You discover that the site is hosted on AWS with an outdated Apache February 4, 29 server. The insight is that Apache February 4, 29 has known vulnerabilities, such as CV 2019-0196, which can be exploited if unpatched. The SSL certificate is valid but issued by a free provider such as Let's Encrypt. The insight is that while free certificates are not inherently bad, organizations using them for critical applications might lack robust security practices. The subdomains include test.examplecompany.com. The insight is that a test environment is exposed and may contain weak passwords or unfinished security setups. How this helps ethical hackers. The Netcraft's report allows you to build a target profile, identifying key components of the system and their security levels. Focus on specific vulnerabilities, like outdated servers or exposed subdomains. Prepare for active reconnaissance by pinpointing areas that require further testing. The next tool we will be looking will be Whois Lookup tool. It is an essential component of passive reconnaissance in ethical hacking. It provides valuable information about a domain's ownership, registration details, and technical contacts. The Whois lookup is used to extract publicly available data about a domain or IP address. This data often includes registrant details, name, email, and organization. Domain registration and expiry dates. Name servers associated with the domain. This information is critical for understanding who owns a domain and how it is managed. Tools for Whois lookup. The web-based tools are ICANN Whois. Website, lookup.icann.org. Reliable for extracting up-to-date Whois information directly from the governing body. whois.net. Website, www.whois.net. It is user-friendly interface for quickly accessing domain data. The command line tool. For Linux and Mac OS users. Open the terminal and type whoisexample.com. This command queries the Whois database and returns the results in the terminal. How to use Whois lookup. Choose your preferred tool, web-based or command line. Enter the domain name you want to analyze, like example.com. Review the returned information for key details about the domain. Sample output looks like. Here's an example of the kind of data a Whois lookup might return. Domain name, example.com. Registrar, GoDaddy. Registrant name, Jane Doe. Registrant email, admin@example.com. Registration date, August 25, 2010. Expiry date, August 25, 2025. Name servers. ns1.example.com. ns2.example.com. The insights for ethical hackers are like domain ownership and contact details. What to look for. The registrant's name and email address. Technical and administrative contact information. Why it's useful. It helps identify the person or organization responsible for the domain. The email address might be a target for social engineering attacks such as phishing. Domain registration and expiry dates. What to look for. The registration date, how old the domain is. The expiry date, when it needs to be renewed. Why it's useful. Older domains may have outdated security measures in place. Domains close to their expiry may have reduced oversight, potentially leading to misconfigurations. Name servers. What to look for. The name servers such as ns1.example.com indicates where the domain's DNS records are managed. Why it's useful. It helps identify hosting providers or DNS service providers. Misconfigured name servers can lead to DNS vulnerabilities, such as DNS hijacking. Practical example for students. Let's analyze a domain, testsite.com, using ICANN-Whois. Steps are. Visit ICANN-Whois. Enter testsite.com in the search bar. Review the output. Results may look like. Domain name, testsite.com. Registrar, Namecheap. Registrant name, John Smith. Registrant email, admin@testsite.com. Registration date, March 1, 2015. Expiry date, March 1, 2026. Name servers. ns1.testsite.com. ns2.testsite.com. What insights you can get from this? The domain is managed by Namecheap. The registrant email could be tested for further reconnaissance via social engineering. The domain has been active for several years, suggesting a mature infrastructure, but it's still essential to test for outdated systems. How this helps ethical hackers. Profiling the target. Knowing who owns a domain and how it's managed helps build a comprehensive understanding of the target. Finding entry points. Misconfigured name servers or outdated domains may present opportunities for exploitation. Identifying social engineering opportunities. Exposed contact details like emails can be a starting point for phishing or pretexting, within legal boundaries. Always ensure you are working ethically and within the scope of permission. OSINT lookup provides publicly available information, but misusing this data can breach privacy laws or ethical guidelines. Next, we will look into the Google Search Advanced Operators. Google isn't just a search engine, it's a powerful tool for ethical hackers to uncover publicly available yet often overlooked information. By using advanced search operators, you can refine your queries to extract specific data, like hidden directories, exposed email addresses, and sensitive documents. Let's deep dive into how to use these operators effectively. Google's indexing power allows ethical hackers to discover pages, files, and directories unintentionally exposed to the public. Identify sensitive information like email addresses or internal documents. Pinpoint potential vulnerabilities, such as open login portals or unprotected admin pages. These techniques rely on Google's ability to crawl and index vast amounts of data across the web. Some of the search operators and practical examples are. Cite operator. What it does, it limits search results to a specific domain. Example, cite example.com login. Practical use. Finds login pages on a target website. Useful for identifying where authentication mechanisms are in place. Quotation marks. What it does, it finds exact phrases or words. Example, admin@example.com. Practical use. Locate specific email addresses exposed on web pages or documents. Entitle, index of. What it does, it searches for pages with index of in the title, often indicating open directories. For example, entitle, index of site, example.com. Practical use, identifies directories listing files, such as backups or logs. File type, operator. What it does, finds files of specific types, such as PDFs, Excel sheets, or Word documents. For example, file type, PDF, confidential. Practical use. Locate sensitive documents containing keywords like confidential or internal. At operator. What it does, finds email addresses linked to a specific domain. For example, at example.com. The practical use may be: identifies email addresses for potential social engineering targets. How to use Google search operators. Steps. Open Google and type in your query using the relevant operators. Combine multiple operators for more refined searches. For example, site, example.com, file type, PDF, security. Review the search results carefully for relevant links and information. Use quotation marks to match exact phrases, avoiding irrelevant results. Combine operators to narrow down results, such as site, example.com, and title, index of, file type, txt. Bookmark useful pages or save the results for analysis later. Insights for ethical hackers. Here's what you can learn and why it matters. Discover unsecured directories and files. Open directories may contain backups, logs, or sensitive documents inadvertently exposed online. Example, a backup folder with older, unpatched configurations. Identify exposed documents. Using the file type, operator reveals internal documents like financial reports or security policies. Example, an unprotected PDF titled internal_audit_2023.pdf could highlight vulnerabilities. Locate email addresses. Emails like admin@example.com might provide insight into how the organization handles admin tasks or IT support, valuable for social engineering simulations. Practical example for ethical hackers. Suppose you're tasked with analyzing targetcompany.com to gather passive intelligence. The steps may include: search for open directories with queries like query, in title, index of, site, targetcompany.com. Output, index of /test/, index of /logs/. Search for internal documents. Query, site, targetcompany.com, file type, PDF, confidential. Output, https://targetcompany.com/docs/confidential_policy.pdf. Search for email addresses. Query at targetcompany.com. Output, admin@targetcompany.com. it.support@targetcompany.com. Analysis. Open directories might have exposed test environments or log files containing debug information. PDFs could provide insights into security policies or sensitive operations. Email addresses could reveal individuals responsible for IT infrastructure. Always ensure you have permission to perform reconnaissance on a live target. The use of advanced Google operators is powerful but must align with ethical and legal standards. The next tool we will discuss is Shodan. The Shodan is a search engine designed specifically for internet-connected devices. Unlike traditional search engines that index websites, Shodan focuses on discovering servers, routers, webcams, and even IoT devices such as smart TVs and industrial control systems. It's a vital tool for ethical hackers, network administrators, and cybersecurity enthusiasts. Shodan allows users to discover devices exposed to the Internet, identify open ports and running services, analyze device configurations, operating systems, and potential vulnerabilities, gain insight into the digital footprint of networks and devices. This information is crucial for assessing the security posture of devices and understanding potential attack vectors. How to use Shodan. Basic searches. Domain search. Enter a domain like example.com to find connected devices. IP address search. Look up a specific IP to get detailed device and service information. Device type search. Use keywords like webcam or router to discover related devices. Advanced filters. Filter by country, narrow results to a specific region. For example, country, US. Filter by port, focus on devices with a specific open port. For example, port 22, SSH. Filter by OS, find devices running a specific operating system. For example, OS, Windows. Example query. Search for devices running Apache web servers in the United States. Apache, country, US. Let's say you search for a domain, example.com. Shodan might return IP 203.0.113.15. Hostname, server.example.com. Open ports, 22, SSH, 80, HTTP. OS, Ubuntu 20.04 LTS. Services, Apache 2.4, OpenSSH 8.0. Vulnerabilities, CVE 2021-44515, CVE 2020-12345. Insights for ethical hackers are like: analyze exposed services and open ports. What to look for. Ports exposed to the Internet, such as 22 for SSH, 3389 for RDP. Active services like web servers, Apache, Nginx, databases, MySQL, MongoDB, and file sharing services, FTP, SMB. Why it's useful. Open ports are potential entry points for attackers. Understanding the services running on these ports helps you assess vulnerabilities. Identify vulnerabilities and patch levels. What to look for. CVE known as common vulnerabilities and exposures entries tied to devices and software versions. Outdated software or unpatched systems. Why it's useful. It helps to prioritize which systems require updates or patches to mitigate known vulnerabilities. Understand device digital footprint. What to look for. Host names and IP addresses associated with devices. Geolocation data indicating where devices are physically located. Metadata such as ISP details or certificate information. Why it's useful. It gives a clear picture of how devices are distributed and connected, helps identify weak links in the network. Suppose you're tasked with assessing the security of a hypothetical domain, companySite.com. Steps may include: go to shodan.io and search for companySite.com. Review the results. Example output would be like: IP 198.51.100.10. Hostname, webserver.companySite.com. Open ports, 22, SSH, 443, HTTPS, 3306, MySQL. OS, Windows Server 2019. Services, IIS 10, MySQL 5.7. Vulnerabilities, CVE 2020-12345, CVE 2021-56789. From this we can insight like: open ports. SSH on port 22 might be vulnerable if default credentials or weak passwords are in use. MySQL on port 3306 should ideally be restricted to internal networks. Software and vulnerabilities. MySQL 5.7 and IIS 10 are identified. The CVEs suggest known exploits, which can guide further investigation. Services. IIS, web server, might reveal directory structures or sensitive files if not properly configured. Ethical use of Shodan. Shodan provides powerful insights, but it must be used responsibly. Only search for domains or IP addresses that you own or have permission to analyze. Avoid accessing or exploiting devices without explicit authorization. Use Shodan as a tool to identify and mitigate security risks, not to exploit them. Why Shodan is valuable for ethical hacking. Discover exposed devices, quickly find improperly secured devices, like IoT systems or industrial control systems. Assess risks, understand the attack surface by analyzing open ports, services, and associated vulnerabilities. Prioritize security efforts, focus on systems with the highest risk due to outdated software or critical vulnerabilities. Experiment with Shodan by analyzing test environments or publicly available IoT devices, like webcams. Use the following query to discover generic devices in your region. Country, US port 80. Next, we will discuss about the social media analysis. Social media platforms are goldmines of publicly available information. Ethical hackers use these platforms to gather data about an organization's employees, technologies, and culture. This process is often referred to as open-source intelligence, OSINT, and it's essential for mapping out potential security gaps and identifying weak links. Social media analysis aims to identify key personnel and their roles within the organization. Uncover details about technologies and tools used by the company. Spot potential human vulnerabilities for social engineering or phishing attacks. This passive reconnaissance technique focuses on leveraging public information to build a comprehensive profile of the target. Let's now discuss about the social media platforms and their use cases. LinkedIn. The LinkedIn is a professional network where employees often list their job roles, skills, and certifications. Use case. Search for the company name along with terms like security or IT. For example, Corp Security. Twitter. Twitter is an open platform where people discuss tools, events, or updates related to their work. Use case. Search for tweets mentioning the company name and keywords like cybersecurity or network. For example, at Corp Cybersecurity. How to use social media for analysis. Steps for LinkedIn are: go to LinkedIn. Use the search bar to enter queries like Corp IT staff, Corp network security. Review profiles for details like job titles, like system administrator, security analyst. Skills such as firewall management, cloud computing. Certifications, like CSSP, CEH. Steps for Twitter. Go to Twitter. Use the search bar to enter queries like at Corp Security. Cybersecurity tools, at Corp. Review tweets for mentions of tools or technologies in use. Discussions about ongoing projects or vulnerabilities. Insights for ethical hackers are like building an organizational profile. What to look for. Employees' roles and technical skills. Certifications indicating expertise levels, like CSSP, CEH. Tools and technologies mentioned in tweets or profiles. Why it's useful. Helps identify the organization's IT infrastructure. Reveals technologies that may have known vulnerabilities. Spotting potential targets for phishing. What to look for. Email addresses on LinkedIn profiles or public discussions. Active users on Twitter discussing sensitive information. Why it's useful. Employees sharing too much online may unknowingly expose vulnerabilities. Personal data can be used to craft targeted phishing emails or social engineering schemes. Suppose you're tasked with analyzing Corp to gather intelligence about their security practices. Steps. LinkedIn. Search for Corp Security. Results. Jane Doe. Security engineer at Corp. Skills, SIEM configuration, threat hunting. Technologies, Splunk, SolarWinds, Nessus. Insights. The company uses tools like Splunk and SolarWinds, which could have misconfigurations or vulnerabilities. Jane Doe might be a key contact for social engineering due to her role. Twitter. Search for at Example Corp, Network Security. Results. Our team is loving the new AWS WAF setup for DDoS protection. At Example Corp. Deploying Nessus scans across all endpoints this week. Hashtag Cybersecurity at Example Corp. Insights. The organization is actively using AWS WAF and Nessus. If Nessus is misconfigured or outdated, it could be an entry point. While social media analysis relies on publicly available information, it's critical to avoid contacting individuals without authorization. Never use the data to harass or exploit people. Always adhere to legal and ethical guidelines. Why social media analysis is valuable. Human weaknesses. Employees are often the weakest link in cybersecurity, making social engineering a key attack vector. Technology footprint. Knowing the tools and platforms a company uses allows for targeted vulnerability assessments. Preparation for phishing simulations. By identifying potential targets, ethical hackers can test the organization's resilience to phishing attacks. Practice these techniques on publicly available accounts of well-known companies. For instance, search for LinkedIn, Microsoft Security Team. Twitter at Microsoft, Cloud Security. Next, we will discuss about public code repositories. Code repositories like GitHub are vital tools for software development, enabling teams to collaborate and share code. However, they can also become a significant source of unintended exposure. Public repositories sometimes contain sensitive information, such as API keys, passwords, or configuration files, due to oversight by developers. Ethical hackers can use this to identify and demonstrate security risks responsibly. The public code repositories are valuable for things like locating accidentally exposed sensitive data, such as API keys or database credentials. Identifying the technologies and programming frameworks used by an organization. Highlighting misconfigurations or poor security practices in codebases. Some of the popular platforms are. GitHub is the most widely used platform for hosting code repositories. Its extensive search capabilities make it a go-to resource for Reconnaissance. How to use public code repositories. Using GitHub's built-in search bar. Go to GitHub. Enter the company name or domain name in the search bar. Example, company name. Refine the search using filters. Language, narrow down by programming language such as Java or Python. Repositories, explore specific repositories related to the company. What insights ethical hackers can get. Identify risks in public repositories. What to look for. Exposed credentials, like AP_key, database_password. Hard-coded IP addresses or server endpoints. Misconfigured.env or configuration files. Why it's useful. Reveal security gaps that attackers could exploit. Demonstrates the importance of securing sensitive data during development. Analyze the organization's technology stack. What to look for. Frameworks and languages used, such as React or Flask or any other. Dependencies listed in files like package.json, node.js, or requirements.txt. In Python. Why it's useful. It provides insight into the tools and technologies an organization relies on. Identifies potential vulnerabilities in outdated or insecure libraries. Let's understand common security mistakes. What to look for. Lack of .gitignore files leading to sensitive files being committed. Publicly accessible .env files containing credentials. Why it's useful. Highlights how development practices can lead to unintended exposure. Educates developers on the importance of secure coding practices. Suppose you're analyzing the public repositories of a company called Example Corp. Steps. Google search. Query, site, github.com example corp. Output. github.com/examplecorp/web-app. github.com/examplecorp/internal-config. Visit github.com/examplecorp/internal-config. Look for sensitive files like .env, config.json, or .yaml. Sample file contents locks like #config.json. AP_key 123456789 appdef. DB_user, admin. DB_pass, password 123. Here we can see that the repository exposes sensitive data like API keys and database credentials. The company uses a JSON-based configuration system, revealing its development practices. Keep in mind about the ethical considerations that the permission is mandatory. Only analyze repositories you own or have explicit authorization to investigate. Report responsibly. If you discover sensitive data, notify the repository owner or organization responsibly. Don't exploit. Never misuse credentials or data you encountered during reconnaissance. So, why public code repositories are valuable? Education on secure coding practices. Analyzing repositories teaches you how to avoid common pitfalls like committing sensitive files. Identifying organizational weaknesses. Repositories reveal not just code but also cultural practices, such as poor security hygiene. Preparation for penetration testing. Understanding what data is at risk helps create realistic penetration testing scenarios. Pro tip for students. Practice by analyzing open-source projects or creating your own GitHub repository to simulate real-world scenarios. For example, search for site, github.com password on Google and examine common mistakes in open repositories. Create a mock.env file in your repository and practice securing it with .gitignore. Also practice using real-world domains and publicly accessible tools like Netcraft. Analyze well-known domains like bbc.com or google.com. Who is lookup? Investigate domains such as example.com or microsoft.com. Google operators. Search for public files, emails, or subdomains on example.com. Shodan. Explore IoT devices or servers with simple queries like port 443 country, US. Passive reconnaissance not only teaches students how to use real-world tools but also emphasizes the value of publicly available information in cybersecurity. With practice, they'll develop the skills to identify risks while maintaining ethical and legal boundaries. Information gathering, or reconnaissance, is the very first phase of ethical hacking. Think of it as setting the stage for everything that follows. Without proper preparation, you're just guessing your way through, which is neither efficient nor effective. Why start here? This phase is all about understanding your target and building a solid strategy. Just like a builder wouldn't start construction without blueprints, an ethical hacker wouldn't jump into scanning or attacking without first gathering essential information. Reconnaissance gives you the insights you need to act smartly and responsibly. Passive reconnaissance serves as the foundation of this phase. It's your starting point, where you quietly observe and collect details without interacting directly with the target. This low-risk approach helps you build a strong knowledge base for the next steps, such as active reconnaissance or testing specific vulnerabilities. What does this achieve? Preparation. You gain a clear picture of the target's environment. Strategy formation. Based on what you learn, you can develop an effective and precise plan for the next steps. Efficiency. It ensures you focus only on the critical areas, saving time and effort. In short, this phase is like the foundation of a house, everything else relies on its strength. If you do it well, you set yourself up for success in the ethical hacking process. That brings us to the end of today's lecture on passive reconnaissance. We've explored the foundational phase of ethical hacking, where we quietly gather valuable information about a target using tools like Netcraft, WHOS Lookup, Google Advanced Operators, Shodan, social media analysis, and public code repositories. By now, you should have a clear understanding of how to map out a target's digital footprint without direct interaction. So, what you've learned today. The importance of passive reconnaissance in the ethical hacking process. Tools and techniques to uncover critical details like open ports, exposed directories, and even sensitive data. How to analyze and use the gathered information to identify vulnerabilities responsibly. Remember, ethical hacking always starts with good preparation, and passive reconnaissance ensures you're equipped with the right insights to move forward. What's next? In the next lecture, we'll take things a step further with active reconnaissance. This is where the game gets more interactive. You'll learn how to directly interact with the target systems. Use tools like Map, Metasploit, and others to probe deeper. Identify live hosts, open ports, and services running on them. While active reconnaissance is more intrusive, it provides deeper insights and sets the stage for penetration testing. Make sure your virtual lab is set up and ready, as we'll be diving into hands-on activities. Until then, review today's concepts, practice using the tools responsibly, and prepare for an exciting next step. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your fellow learners, and subscribe to the AI Academy. By doing so, you'll stay updated with our latest lessons in ethical hacking and gain access to more practical insights, tips, and hands-on activities. Together, let's continue mastering the art of ethical hacking. See you in the next lecture, excited to have you back.